Okay, there we go. So I'll first ask for your name.
Oh, Kenneth,
Can
middle initial E,
Mm-hmm.
last name Cox, Cox.
Yes. Where are you from?
I was born in Buffalo, New York, but I was raised in Niagara Falls primarily, and I lived in Japan for 7 years as a child.
Why'd you live in Japan?
My father was in the Air Force.
What's something that you are currently most grateful for?
I think the way that my parents raised me, we were church going family, we were tight, and just the principles that my parents taught me, which I've carried out as an adult, and that's helped me and Nana and Marcel and Naomi live a good life, and I see Marcel and Naomi share the same principles, taking care of family, working hard, and getting a good education. And that takes you far.
Yes. All right. Well, I'm gonna start asking you about Love Canal now.
Mhm.
How old were you when you lived in Love Canal, and what do you remember most clearly about your life there?
Well, we lived in Love Canal. It was a nice area in the Niagara Falls, in the city of Niagara Falls. It was a public housing unit that was separated by what we call the canal. It was an open area and it didn't have anything on it, but the Hooker Chemical Company had been dumping waste, hazardous waste there for 40 years, 4 decades, without anyone within the community realizing it. And then on the other side of this area, which they called the canal, were residential homes. But we lived in a multi-ethnic um, public housing development known as
Mhm.
Griffin, Grifson. Um, but it was, I went to a great high school called LaSalle Senior High School. I was a star football and track star, but I was also on the honor roll. So I was a true student athlete at a time when African American students and students of color were not really known as scholars.
Mhm.
So,
When you were living there, um, did you notice that something was off in terms of like the chemicals, or were you kind of just living your daily life without knowing what was going?
well, at first we were just living our daily life, but around the first year we were there used to be this strange smell in our basements.
Mm.
It seemed like no matter how well you cleaned the basement, there was this smell that remained. And it's a smell I'll never forget because it hovered over the area. We knew something was wrong. And then we found out that multiple infant deaths occurred where babies were stillborn, or if they were carried to full term, that babies came out sick. That was combined with children and adults getting kidney disease, liver disease. Um, we all suffered from headaches that appeared that they, no matter what you took, they didn't go away. And there developed because we were there from 75 to 79. I went to Howard in 78, and I'll send you a picture of a Howard photo how I look. Um, and people then began to complain, and at first, like I said, we didn't know what was going on. We had no idea that this large international chemical company based in Niagara Falls was secretly dumping these chemicals. And so it began to snowball where local news reports in the Buffalo, Niagara Falls area began to report on the wide range of kidney disease, liver disease, cancer
Mm.
in the area. And it came about in the later part of 79 and 80 that President Jimmy Carter and several local legislators got involved because they knew something was wrong. So it was in 79 that they found out that this area had been the waste site of the chemicals that were dumped by this corporation. And so they actually um, took all the people that were in the area, and we had to live in hotels for a year and a half
Wow.
while legislation went on. That is still ongoing now because they developed they tried to say that they did some remediation in the area through the New York State Health Department. They said they remediated the site to contain the waste, but there's no way in the world, no matter how much they tried to remediate. I've actually gone through the area several times as an adult, and the first thing that hits me is the smell. The smell is not left.
Mm.
Since that time, they've actually built new homes and built a new apartment complex where our old, area, our old development stood. And that really was the beginning of the mass exodus of people from the city of Niagara Falls. It really caused a great displacement, diaspora, so to speak, away from Niagara Falls to all areas of the world.
Mm. What kind of housing are they building right now? Is it like projects or like regular
Well,
apartments?
they don't call them. They no longer are part of the Niagara Falls Housing Authority,
Mm.
but people have actually profited off of the disaster. If you go back and do any history of Niagara Falls, specifically the Love Canal, you'll see a lady called Lois Gibbs who actually developed a mass movement that still exists today. It was kind of like the initial beginning of toxic waste areas found all over the U.S. where other chemical companies were actually dumping waste in residential areas and not disclosing this in local areas. And I guarantee you that there are thousands of other sites like this that are just waiting to be found, which
Yes.
is one of the reasons why it's important that poor people, because I grew up poor, have advocates that can represent poor people and people of color, because our area was primarily people of color, but there were, white poor people, Hispanic poor people, black poor people, people that didn't have the resources to own a home, and those things. You have to forgive Nana because she's speaking. I don't want to interrupt her. But you know your Nana, so
Yep.
so anyway. um, but just to make a long story short, when you see my picture, you'll see someone who was in tip-top shape, who went from being in tip-top shape,
Hmm.
who was playing college football and wanted to continue to play. I had to stop playing because I couldn't pass the physical at
Wow.
19 because all my numbers, my high blood pressure, I started having kidney issues at 19, um, and which eventually led to me being diagnosed with kidney failure in 2015. I was on dialysis for 6 years. Unfortunately, in February of 2021, I got a kidney transplant, but my health issues began in Love Canal. And unfortunately, when the citizens of Niagara Falls got together to fight this, they tried to exclude those of us who were the poor. Lois Gibbs led a development that primarily benefited those who inhabited the houses, and they tried to exclude us in the public housing area. And this just shows you even the division among those who were affected, that racism
Mm.
and the economic situation uh, contributed to people trying to slight those of us who the Bible calls us the least of these. And, we had to fight to be included in something that should never have been separated along racial and economic lines, which is all the more reason why society needs people like yourself who are invested, not just in making a lot of money, because there's nothing wrong with making money. You work hard for it. I've done that. But at the same time, there has to be social and economic justice and people who are willing to fight for that on behalf of others because, as you see with the current administration, some people are more involved in enriching themselves at the expense of others. I was one of the ones that was used as a tool to fund the economic viability and richness of those in power.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh yeah,
And you still live in New York, right?
I still live in the Buffalo area of New York, which is close to the Love Canal, but 25 miles away.
Have you ever thought about leaving New York? Or you left New York at some point to live
I
in
left New
Philly?
York for all of I left New York to go to Howard in Washington D.C.
Mm-hmm.
I worked on Wall Street for 2 years for J.P. Morgan Chase. Then I went to grad school in Atlanta, Georgia, for 5 years. I actually earned 2 degrees there. Returned to Buffalo briefly to work with an accounting firm, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and then I worked for the state of New York for 14 years, and it was in Albany where I met Nana. Yeah, so and then subsequently after Nana and we were married for 10 years, I got a job with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission in Philadelphia. That's how we ended up in Philly. And I developed kidney failure while we were in Philly.
Wow. And you recently underwent a surgery?
I received a new kidney in on February 10th of 2021, and no longer on dialysis. I have been able to successfully maintain my, kidney transplant. I take at least, I say 30 pills a day
Hmm.
to maintain that, which is one of the fallouts from growing up in an area like Love Canal. I don't have any natural physical immunity from disease. That's why I have to take the pills on a regular basis to prevent rejection. But also, have to undergo a lot of testing so that if it does appear the kidney's been rejected before I have to go back on dialysis, which I hope I never have to do. They attempt to interject, and they've had to do that twice where my kidney was regressing, and they were able to successfully put me on a regimen that kept my kidney intact.
Wow. Do you feel like you have any, because what you've gone through due
Hmm.
to the Love Canal and due to the government's failure to educate the people of these area or multiple areas about the environmental impacts, do you have any anger or like fear left over, or you just moving through it?
Well, you know what? All three of them. I moved through it through my faith. Being a minister, I realize that our time on the earth is limited, but the my faith in God's purpose for my life gives me hope. So that is a counter against depression. Of course, I think, and if you ever watch me, I ponder a lot. A lot
Mhm.
of times I'm not always engaged in conversation. Even when I am, I'm more observant. And sometimes that's hard for people that are not academics to understand. My bodily weaknesses are ever present with me 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I am angry because growing up in that area and having some favoritism from the larger community because of my prowess as an athlete and academic, I have the tools that allow me to voice my displeasure, but also speak to things in a logical manner. While at the same time, I realize too that systemically there are people, when they see me, they judge me based upon my color until I open my mouth. And then they're shocked that this individual who they thought was just the average guy has all these degrees, certifications. I've worked for most of the largest banks in the world. I'm a technician in what I do. And I hate the fact I never wanted to come back to this area because I had to suffer the the racial slight because before I got to Niagara Falls, my father was stationed at places all over the world. And before we got to Niagara Falls, I spent a year in Montana, where there aren't a lot of people of color. And
Mhm.
I really went through in my freshman year of high school a tremendous racial backlash. And being the only African American student in the city of Havre, Montana, where I went to Havre High School. And the thing that helped mitigate the way that I was treated was the fact that they were also racist against the Native Americans that went to the high school. But I played football and ran track, so being an athlete, they kind of look at you different. But I still got called nigger every day.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, a lot of the people, they were actually voicing the behavior of their parents who, when they would go home and tell them, we have a black student in our class, they were really influenced by that. But then when they met me and they start saying he's really a good guy and he's very smart, I had to deal with breaking the stereotype of people that never met a black person. So, but years later, several of my classmates apologized.
Oh, wow, really?
Oh yeah. When I would go home, that's all they talked about was having you in our classroom, and they wondered how you were. And when we would tell them he's a good guy, they were like, "Yeah, just keep watching. I bet you he steals. I bet you this."
Mm.
Yeah. So
Wow, that's so interesting because I feel like even in a time where I'm at school where there is all this education on black folks and we
mhm.
should all have the knowledge, I've still experienced things like
Oh
adjacent
yeah.
to that.
Right.
Yes, just
Right.
questioning my place in the classroom, being the
Right.
only black person in the class most of the time here at Oberlin. It's
Right.
definitely an interesting way to move through life, but it makes you stronger. It makes you
It does. It
really
does.
intelligent and
Right.
intentional.
Racism and sexism are real. I don't care if it's 2025 going into 2026. As long as we're on the earth, we'll have to fight these things because certain people feel the exclusive right to look down on others. And even with economic and social injustice, environmental, um, these things do exist primarily out of the animus of humanity, a certain block of humanity who they lessen our humanity by feeling as if they are entitled to treat us with disdain. And we're all made in God's image, and it's not right for you to discriminate on the basis of color, race, socioeconomic status, whatever it is. We don't have a right to do that.
Thank you so much, Pops. This is
Yeah, no problem.
truly, truly so much important information. I'm so happy I was able to talk to you about this.
Well, I feel honored. I told Nana right after you text me, I said, Maddie wants to interview her pops. I'm like, you know what? That made my day and made hers too. So I know you. Oh, hold on one second. Hold on one second. Maddie, how are you, sweetie?
I'm good.